look, like we said, we're going to have a whole main entree in a little bit diving into the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark situation. But I do want to at least begin there with this, Mitch. The Indiana Fever. So many people looked at, well, they have Caitlin Clark, they have Aaliyah Boston, they're going to have all these national games. Everyone's going to have them in their national conscious. They're going to get all this hype. But I want to take all the publicity out of it. And if I can possibly, I know it's kind of difficult to separate Caitlin Clark and the hype train from her actual play on a basketball court. But I want to commend the entire Indiana Fever operation from top to bottom and how they have constructed this roster, including their front office, bringing back some old familiar faces, including Stephanie White, who is, of course, now the head coach once again of the Indiana Fever. The fact that they made bold moves to say goodbye to Christy Sides, to say, yes, certainly we started putting it together in the second half of the season, but the enemy of great is good. They go out, they bring DeWanna Bonner from Connecticut with Stephanie White. That's the veteran presence you need. And certainly someone who has a ton, as the third all-time leading scorer in WNBA history, a ton of postseason experience, that a roster that had just 19 total postseason games under their belt headed into the 2024 playoffs. They needed that. Sophie Cunningham, all the weird drama aside, one of the we're not going to dive into that here. That's a weird one. Maybe next week. One of the best sixth women of the year, in my opinion, in terms of the candidates. Certainly could make that argument a couple of the last few seasons when she was with the Phoenix Mercury. Natasha Howard, another veteran presence inside to complement Aaliyah Boston from top to bottom. And I think when you juxtapose, Mitch, the construction of the Fever roster with that of their opening night counterpart in the Chicago Sky, all the pieces fit together. And I understand it's a small sample size. As we're recording this podcast, the Fever getting ready to face the Atlanta Dream at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. But I think it's really important to just look at how the Sky are being constructed, where their centerpieces in a perhaps more, we'll call it throwback format, are two forwards in Camila Cardoso and Angel Reese, who both shot less than 50% from the floor on Saturday afternoon. And yet Haley Van Lith comes off the bench and has 4 points in 4 minutes. You might want to play her a little bit more. And then you look at the Fever, where they can play this 5-out, 4-out offense, where every single woman on the floor has an opportunity to create her own shot in her own fashion, whether that be from 3-point range, driving to the hoop, whatever it may be. And so for me, I just look at it and the puzzle pieces fit, and it's a long season, but I can't help but just be proud of a team that said, yes, we're good, but we know our window is now here. We thought we maybe had a year or two, but it's here, and we are pushing all our chips to the middle of the table.
Yeah, I think if you go back to last season, I think the Fever's brass front office, brainpower, whatever you want to call it, I think it was clear that they knew that, okay, we have the makings of something here. We have Caitlin and Kelsey, like we talked about. They had a big three: Caitlin, Kelsey, Aaliyah Boston, right? And, they knew that they had something there with that. And the goal was just to build around it and amplify it and put them in the best position possible. Whereas I think if you go to the Sky at the end of last season, while a lot of people thought that, that coach shouldn't have lost their job, they did. And they really didn't have a direction one way or the other. It's like we have this Kennedy Carter thing going on. Now she's not even in the W this year. Okay, we have Angel Reese. Okay, we have Camila Cardoso. Like, Angel is clearly a star to me. Camila hasn't quite grown into that just yet. And then I think they're still trying to figure it out. Like, I don't really expect, despite the star power, the Sky to be a playoff team this year. I think it's clear that, like, they're a year behind the Fever. Like, this is, you hope, if you're a Sky fan or Tyler Marsh or whoever, that this is the year that you figure out what the path forward is, like who you can build around, who are the building blocks, and that sort of thing. As far as the Fever goes, I think that when they put this roster together in the offseason, I imagine that, when they thought of like what the perfect night would be for them, it was pretty close to something like this. If you just look at the numbers, you talk about 40 combined points, rebound, assists for Caitlin Clark. That's pretty good. That's what you want out of her. And then you get double-digit scoring from Kelsey Mitchell and Natasha Howard and Aaliyah Boston, all of whom shooting over 50% from the floor in that game. Dewana Bonner does her thing, savvy vet coming in, 7 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, just kind of stuff in the stat sheet across the board, doing the little things, defending at a high level. Lexi Hall doing good things off the bench. And, you played this well and won by 35 points without Sophie Cunningham, like you mentioned, who we think is somebody who could be the 6th player of the year. They had 10 blocks on a team against a team that has Camila Cardozo and Angel Reese. 5 of those blocks were from Aaliyah Boston. Aaliyah Boston, by the way, just had a really great game, 13 rebounds, like really starting to kind of come into her own, I think, as a W player and could have her best season yet this year. So, yeah, I think if you're the Fever, you're very happy with the season debut that you had. You even had a couple other players that you might not expect to contribute that did some good things off the bench. Michaela Timpson, undrafted free agent, 4 points, 3 minutes doing her thing. I think if they thought, what would be a great night for us, the stats would probably look a lot like this.
To put names to the faces, to the creators of this roster. Do want to note, obviously, Lynn Dunn is as instrumental with the Fever as she ever was, but certainly bringing Kelly Krauskopf back. She was with the Indiana Pacers as their assistant GM. I forgot to mention her name off the top for the last 7 years, since 2018, which coincided with she was actually the GM who drafted Kelsey Mitchell. And as we all know, Kelsey Mitchell's first 7 years in the league, not exactly anything to cry home about with the Indiana Fever. For
Right.
Kelly to come back, hires Amber Cox from the Dallas Wings. Certainly they bring Stephanie back, and that's huge. Again, I think it just speaks to this is an entire city and an entire operation. And I can say this from covering the National Football League as well. You can't always guarantee that after a team has a breakthrough season that they are going to say, hey, here we go. We're putting all our assets. We're pushing everything we possibly can to make this work. Because I've seen it with the team I cover in the Jacksonville Jaguars after that 2022 playoff run. They said, we're going to bank on our players taking the leap and our coaching, like our consistency, continuity. It'll be fine. Imagine if this team had kept Christy Sides. Imagine if they had not opted to go out in free agency and be aggressive and bring in these veteran pieces. For me, it's a no-brainer in terms of proof of concept, in terms of roster building. The Fever, if only through the opening weekend of the season, A+ in my eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in terms of roster building, roster construction, yeah, they've nailed it so far. It's looking like what they imagined, I think, so far. And again, small sample size, first game, all that, but that's as good as you could have hoped for. Win a game by 35 points and have all of your best players play their best games, and then have your available healthy role players doing what they do in certain spots. The absence of Sophie Cunningham notwithstanding. So yeah, that's a great debut for the Fever. I think, and if you're somebody who bet on them in the preseason to win the title, you're feeling pretty happy about what you saw on opening night.
And like I said, as we're recording this, the Fever about to take on the Dream. Shout out to our friend Pat Boylan, friend of the pod, and Debbie Antonelli, who just popped up on my television screen off to my left. And a shout out to Sports Illustrated, great profile on the Fever and how they've constructed this roster outside of the reality that, yes, they do have Caitlin Clark.